G'day and welcome to the channel. Before we flush the dunny on 2020, I thought I'd share with you my favourite images that I took this year. Like many of you, I was locked down for the majority of the year, so I was unable to travel and do any sort of trips. So I had to focus my photography around my property and the local area. I'd just like to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that supported the channel this year. Just by watching, liking, commenting and subscribing has helped this channel grow to over 10,000 subscribers. That's exceeded my expectations tenfold. I actually thought, oh, if I can get 1,000, I'll be very happy. So to get over 10,000 is just amazing. So I thank each and every one of you for that. And a special mention to those members who directly support the channel. With your support, I can continue to make these sorts of videos. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you my top 11 photos that I took this year. I'll show you the photo, I'll show you the raw image, and I'll talk about how I took that photo, why I liked it, did I find anything challenging, and hopefully you can learn from this process. Okay, so number 11 is the amazing and beautiful Eastern Rosella. This colourful parrot is pretty common where I live, however getting photos of it is another matter. It's very flighty, so it's really tough to get close to it. So anytime I get the opportunity to photograph this bird, I take it with both hands and I really do enjoy it. So I was wandering through the Warby Ranges, which is these mountain ranges behind me, and I was actually looking for some turquoise parrots. Often if you just walk around, you might see some birds checking out hollows before they breed. So I was just wandering around looking out for these birds, and I spotted a hollow on the side of a track. There are a couple of birds checking out this hollow, so I thought, oh, I might stake that out. And so I set up in the bush. I was using my 500 with the 2x converter, so I was a fair way away. I put my camo on and I just stood there and waited. After a couple of hours, I was almost ready to give up. But my patience paid off when this Eastern Rosella landed directly on the top of the stump, and it stayed there for a little while, giving me lots of different poses, and it was checking the hollow out. I don't know if it actually nested there, but I was able to get some really good photos. The hard part was picking which ones to process. In the end, I picked this photo with that sort of side profile. We can see the tail, we can see the colors. We've got nice eye contact, and just overall I like this pose. The next image is a white-necked heron. Now I had an amazing session when I did a challenge video using my 40D and a 400 5.6. I highly encourage you to watch that video. I had a lot of fun shooting it. But whilst I was laying in the mud photographing spoonbills, I noticed these herons were just feeding, and another heron came into land, and the one heron that was already there wasn't too happy, so they sort of chased each other around. And I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to get a flight shot. So I've just tracked these birds. They fly fairly slowly, and I've just taken a number of shots as it flew past. And when I checked the back of the camera, I was stoked to see that I'd captured one of them sharp, and it had a really nice sort of banking pose with its wings up, and the light was hitting the bird. And that's often the challenge with bird and flight shots, is to actually get light over the bird without heavy shadows. So I was really happy with that shot. And if you have a look at the raw image, I underexposed it a little bit, but because I shot in raw, I was able to recover the details, and it came up really well, to be honest. So I wasn't too happy with the top right part of the image. You can sort of see that greeny background. So I've just cloned that out, and to make it a sort of a solid uniform background, which I think is a lot more pleasing. So I actually went back to this location the next day, and I actually reviewed a Groundpod, which is what you can see on the screen. Is what I put my camera on to take photos. I got a lot of questions about this Groundpod. I got it from Naturescapes. I think you can get it from Amazon as well, and it's called a skimmer Groundpod. But it's really expensive for what it is. I think it's way overpriced. And I was actually encouraged when I got an email from one of my subscribers in Denmark. His name was Dennis, and he told me that he actually just made his own. He bought a frying pan from IKEA, and he's obviously pretty cluey and used a 3D printer to print the mount. He's designed a mount. I think he said it cost him not much more than $10 US. Now he's been kind enough to share all the files. Put the link in the description, so thanks Dennis for that. Whilst testing the Groundpod, I got to photograph a lot of water birds, and these are some of my favorite birds to photograph. I just love it. I was photographing these spoonbills, and they were feeding, actively feeding. And what I wanted to capture was some sort of behavior. If I could get some sort of prey going into the spoonbill's mouth, that's what I wanted. So I took a lot of photos, and when I was checking them, I was absolutely stoked to see that I captured one just as it's opening its mouth, and there's a tiny little prey you can see between its bill, and that just made my day. And overall, I really like this image. It's, you know, it's sharp, the light's good, there's nothing too distracting, we're nice and low, and overall it just really works for me. And this was probably one of my favorite images that I took that day. I know it's not a pretty bird by any stretch, but I'm more than happy to photograph these birds. I noticed a pair of Australian Grebes breeding on a local lake, Now they're a little bit far away, so I had to use a 2x, which gave me an 800mm focal length. And I took some shots with my 5D4 and they turned out pretty good. But I wanted to try out a crop sensor camera, and the only one I had is my old 40D. So I put that on there and I was photographing the grebe, and probably once every 40 minutes or so, the parents swap positions or swap duties on nesting. So the male and female share the nesting. And I really wanted to capture the male and the female in the one shot, and hopefully both with eye contact. So that's what I was hoping for, and I rattled off a heap of shots, and I was stoked when I got this one which shows the male, which is the dark bird, approaching the nest with the female on it. I've got eye contact from both birds. I'm nice and low. There's nothing too distracting. The viewer gets a feel for the intimate, moment that's going on here. And overall, I was very, very happy with this image. Now the detail is lacking a little bit because of the distance, because of the type of camera. I wish I'd had my 5D4 on at the time, but I'll definitely take it. And you can see in the raw image, I actually almost overexposed this. It was a little bit too bright. So when I shoot with the crop sensor, I expose to the right quite a bit to try and reduce the amount of noise that I get in my images, because old crop sensor bodies are really bad for noise. So if you can make the image as bright as possible without blowing the whites, will reduce the amount of noise in your image. But luckily, because I shot in RAW, I could recover those details and the image worked out just fine. Okay, so my most photographed bird this year was no doubt the Eurasian Coot. I took lots of photos of this bird. I know it's very common and you're probably sick of seeing it, but I'll photograph any bird that wants to go in front of my lens. You just have to be careful with the white bill because it's quite prone to blowing. So this was another photo on my 40D challenge video, and there were a number of coots. I was just laying down in the mud and the birds were just resting. And I know through experience that often birds, when they've finished resting, they'll flap their wings before they move off. It's just a way of stretching and getting their wings ready for if they need to fly. And I noticed the bird, they often give you telltale signs that they're going to start flapping. And as soon as that bird started flapping, I've held down the shutter. Even though the frames per second is pretty slow on that old camera, I still managed to get a burst of shots with the wings. So I ended up going through those. They were all sharp, which is great. Good detail, great light, a really good stretch of images. I picked this one because I kind of like the pose and we got eye contact. And overall, this was probably my favorite coot image that I took this year. All right, that moves us on to a great family of birds in Australia, and those are Woodswallows. But last year they were here over the hotter months, and they were coming down and drinking at a watering hole that I have. And one of my very first videos I ever did on YouTube was photographing this species, and I was stoked when these birds were coming down to drink. Now with the Woodswallows, there's a bit of sexual dimorphism, so the male and the female are slightly different. The male has a darker chest and a much brighter white eyebrow, and the female is lighter. So when I got two birds next to each other, I just couldn't believe my luck, and I just smashed that shutter and took a range of photos. I ended up with a fantastic image that's nice and sharp with both birds, and one that I'm extremely happy to have in my collection. Another species of bird which most bird lovers like are the kingfishers. So there's a few that I get in my local area, but there's one that's my nemesis bird, and that's the Azure Kingfisher. It's a very small kingfisher, but a beautiful bright blue color. It inhabits sort of brackish waterways, and they're not that uncommon, but they just fly around all the time. So I've approached them and they just fly off. So I did find a location where I knew there were a couple of birds, and I've gone to that location, and I had my 500mm lens. I've spotted a bird and I've just crept up slowly, and I think I was just out of eyesight of the bird. I had to shoot between a log and the bird was on this branch coming out. I've got a number of shots. The bird's looked at me and then it's flown off. So I only got a handful of shots and I couldn't improve my position. And when I looked at the back of the camera, I was a little bit disappointed because it wasn't quite the image I was after. Now when I looked at the bird, I didn't mind the pose, and the bird looked pretty good for the high ISO that I was using. When I got it onto Photoshop, I looked at it and I thought, I could probably work this image. So some images I'll take a lot of time with and work them hard in Photoshop, mainly rare birds or photos of birds that I just don't have. And this was one of those shots where I thought, I'm going to do a lot of work here. I think the background needs to be improved. So I have updated the background so it's a lot smoother. I wasn't happy with those highlights that you can see in the raw image. And overall, I think this just works a lot better. You can see it's a big crop. You can see I've done a lot of work, but overall, I'm very happy with the end result. And I think it was worth the effort. So I'm very lucky to have a pair of red-capped robins that bred on my property this year. And not long ago, the fledglings left the nest, So I've been giving the male redcap a few worms, and when the birds left the nest, I've gone back to the vicinity and I've put a few worms on a rock, and I was actually stoked when the males landed on the rock, and one of the young birds has followed him, or both of them have followed him onto the rock, and he started feeding the young birds the mealworms that I'd put there. So I was really happy to get a number of shots. This was probably the best shot that I took, and I'm really happy with it. The male looks fantastic. We've got a nice side profile, eye contact, exposed well. The young bird's obviously calling out, wanting to be fed, so I like that behavior. I would have liked the young bird more side on, but I'm happy with this and I'll definitely take it. So a great record to represent the breeding that we've got here on the property, and I sincerely hope that that young bird moves somewhere else on the property and stays here so we can have more redcaps, because they're just such a beautiful bird. All right, another bird that I photographed a lot this year was the purple swamphen, or pukeko in New Zealand. This is a fun bird to watch. They've got quite a lot of character for a water bird. I was laying in the mud just talking to the camera when this bird's flown in, landed, and then jumped up and down, and I got a number of shots. I'll quickly share with you that little clip of when this bird's landed and how surprised I was, and you can just see on my face how much I enjoyed it. The key with shorebirds. Oh, we've got a pukeko. I don't know what this bird is doing. I don't know what this pukeko was doing, but it was jumping up and down, flapping its wings when it landed, and hopefully I got the shot. So as you saw there, that's a great memory that I have, and one of the benefits of YouTube is I can go back and relive that moment. So I took a number of shots, and I just like this one the most. The wings were right out, the feet was coming up with the mud, and just overall a really cool image that I'm very happy that I took. And I didn't have to do too much in processing, a bit of a crop, but overall, because of how low I was, where the light was coming from, there was nothing overly distracting, so a great image. All right, we're getting to the pointy end of today's video. Number 2 is a Pacific black duck. Photographed Pacific black ducks plenty of times, but I'd never really photographed ducklings, and I was happy when I heard that there were some ducklings at a local lake. I've gone down there, I photographed all the little ducklings around on the water. It was great fun. I saw the mother and I thought I'd love to get a shot of the adult and the young birds together. It didn't really happen for me, them swimming around, and I noticed the mother adult sort of just resting on a rock just out in the lake. And I took a few photos of her, and then I noticed this duckling swim over, and then it's climbed up on the rock, and it just sat on top of this rock, and I couldn't believe it. And so I've started taking photos, couldn't fit them both in the shot because I had too much focal length. I think I was at 800 millimeters and the 40D, a crop body. So I've quickly taken a photo of the young bird and the adult, and I've actually had to stitch them together in post to make it work. And sometimes you have to do that with fixed focal length because we can't zoom. Just overall a sort of unique image, and I think that's what makes good images good. It's just their uniqueness. Have you seen it before? You know, is there something going on which is intriguing? And that definitely is with this image. It's definitely one you look at and you go, oh, that's cute. I haven't seen that before. And I think that's why I like it. So for those eagle-eyed viewers, some of you may have picked this up, but this was actually the 4th image to feature in today's video that I took with my 40D. The 40D is a 13-year-old camera, 10 megapixels, and worth probably 50 bucks. So it goes to show, A, just how important the lens is, technique, and also that, you know, even old cameras can take really good photos and you don't need the newest gear. Hopefully my wife's not watching, but at the end of the day, make the most of the gear that you have and just get out there and have fun. Don't let it inhibit you from taking good shots. All right, that brings us to my favorite image of the year, and this one is by far my favorite above all else. Now, if you've watched the channel from the beginning of the year, you've probably seen this feature on a thumbnail and in a couple of videos. Some of you may have already guessed what it is. It is the sacred kingfisher with this ginormous spider in its mouth. This image is just amazing, and I really, really do love it. There's just something unique about it. It's not every day you see such a big spider in a bird's mouth. And I'm sure when people see this, they think, holy mackerel, how did he take that? And I'll let you know exactly how I took it. I have to give all the credit to one of my lovely subscribers, Jason. He contacted me saying that he monitors a sacred kingfisher nest, and he's been doing it for a number of years, and he invited me to his location. So of course I've said yes. I've gone along, and to my surprise, this bird's coming in with skinks, spiders, little fish, and it was just amazing to see. So I've set up my camera at a fair distance, and I've just spent a number of hours with this bird and taken a number of shots. Now it came back probably once every half hour to an hour, and I got shots with spiders and that skink, etc. This one was easily my favourite shot, just because the spider's so prominent and we can see its legs and we can see everything about it. Great eye contact from the bird, nice green sort of background. Overall, the elements work well together. Now you'll see in the raw image that I did actually crop this by quite a bit, and that was because I didn't want that giant branch that it's on to distract from the overall image. I just thought it was a little bit too big, and that's why I've cropped it in like I did. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video with all of these photos. Let me know in the comments what your favorite photo was from 2020 of mine. If you like this content, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. Thanks to the members for your continued support. 2020 has been a funny old year. I've really enjoyed making these videos. I'm really humbled by all the support. 10,000 subscribers plus is just incredible. Let's hope 2021 is as good. I'm going to continue doing educational videos, in the field videos. So join me in 2021, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and good luck and happy birding. Take care. See you later. Picking them. Flies. You know you're in Australia when you get a lot of flies. But I got to photograph lots of water, but I got to going